we aren't taken seriously. And that's scary. It's scary.
Education needs a miracle. There needs to be a miracle in the field of education.
Jesus is the first advocate.
God is disappointed.
I'm pretty sure everybody that's on this call knows something about somebody who had some type of pregnancy complication.
When combining those identities as a Christian, as a Black woman, and referring back to the source, which is God, God is not happy with the injustices.
I feel like it would be a disservice to the kingdom for us to not take on the advocate aspect of Jesus as well as the loving aspect of Jesus.
Lens Talk from Jasmine Rene Studios and presented by JRTV. Who is doing the looking? Who is doing the telling?
I believe that God called me to do her academy to serve as well as set a place for young girls in a world and in a space where there isn't room for them, or they're told there isn't room for them. So my goal really was to make sure that they are not only leaders, but change makers, movers and shakers in their communities and in their schools and in Christ.
I have decided, I'm from Anniston, Alabama, by the way, and I have decided to come back home, and I'm actually currently running for office. I'm running for City Council, Ward 3, and that has been such a trying journey for me. I knew that I needed to run because it was so purposeful, and I knew that there was such a void. My grandma always told me it's going to take the wisdom of our elders and the young people's energy. And I truly believe that as I have matriculated throughout Spelman and just throughout life, that I have definitely soaked in a lot of the wisdom from our elders. And I have a lot of the young people's energy. And I know that God created me for such a time as this, to be able to foster relationships within my community, to be able to speak to those who have been neglected for so long.
One of the things I feel purpose to do that I've got so much validation regarding is not only doing medicine. I feel purposed in the area of women's reproductive health, but in addition to that, God has been dealing with me lately about the structural barriers that Black people have to deal with when trying to apply and get into medical school. So he gave me this thing just out of the blue, and he was like, I started this page called More Black Docs, and it started off just like reading personal statements for free for people, but then it was starting to get people to come speak about their experiences, their struggles, so that people like us know that, it's hard for us, but we are needed in the field.
I'm interested in the business side of healthcare. So in the fall, I'm starting to get my master's in healthcare administration. Long-term goal is to be the CEO of a nonprofit hospital system, focus more so on community and populations, and not necessarily profit. And so I have a heart for people, I have a heart for improving the quality of life for people. So I want to do that through the business side of healthcare.
I'm very passionate about kids. I'm very passionate about students. I strongly believe my purpose in life is just to advocate for children, point them in the right direction, as well as lead them to God. A lot of kids do not have a representation that looks like them, that they can turn to for different aspects, even outside the classroom. So I want to provide myself as God uses me to be that advocate for them in and outside the classroom.
I will be relocating to Memphis, Tennessee. He's going to Nashville, but I'm going to Memphis, but we'll both be in Tennessee. And I'll be teaching. I'm actually going through the hiring process with my schools for the next 2 weeks. So I'll be seeing where I'm placed pretty soon. Hopefully I can get third grade math, because that is what I really want. So we'll see how that goes. Long-term goals, I want to be an educational policy analyst, but then I also want to charter my own faith-based boarding school for girls.
Black Lives Matter. A global outcry that has been declared all over the world. 2020, the year predestined for perfect vision. The scales are falling from the eyes of many. An awakening to the systemic oppression that Black people have endured for over 400 years is here. This nation is in the midst of a pandemic, and it's not just COVID-19 that is affecting Black and brown communities at alarming rates. There's a pandemic of racism at hand, and neither is a conspiracy.
These are literally all our young people, both white and Black.
I've never been so angry in my entire life. I shake when I enter this building. You infuriate me.
Real lives are at stake, and due to the disease of racism, real lives have been robbed. George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and countless more to name.
The government also doesn't look after me. I'm scared of the police. What kind of mess is that?
But what are the lenses of Black women during all of this?
Charge the cops. Do your job. Do what you say. This country is supposed to be about, the land of the free for all. It has not been free for Black people, and we are tired. America has looted Black people.
The stage is set. The spotlight is on. Lens Talk begins now.
I want to survey the room really quickly and just ask how is everyone doing? What is on our hearts?
It's a lot, but I also feel like God put it to happen like this intentionally. Like, for example, not only are we talking about Black Lives Matter, but we not only talking about it in the lens of police killing cops. Like, we also get to talk about it through redlining. We get to talk about it through health disparities. We get to talk about it through structural racism. So I feel like God is shining a light on all the things that are not like him, so we can start doing the work and educating people on how to be a part of the change.
I see it as a way of like divine intervention almost. God literally had the whole world sit their tails down, not only in the coronavirus pandemic, but we literally had to examine every structure within the entire world. And the biggest pandemic that we just can't seem to overcome was racism.
Yeah.
And I really see it as God is giving us an opportunity to really tear down those structures, to really revitalize, to really dig up those roots. And I think we're seeing it every day. Now, a lot of times, some people, some companies are pacifying the problem to appease us, but we have to know the difference between those two. And I think we'll get into that as we continue this conversation. But I really do think that it's almost such a divine thing that we had to sit ourselves down and really, really examine what we're really going through, and something that we haven't overcome for centuries.
Like how we've been saying, everything is so intentional and everything is so divine when it comes to what's going on in this world. And I don't think that it is by accident that this is going on in the year 2020, when we referred to it as the year of perfect vision. And it is not just us seeing it, but vision is understanding what you're seeing. And we are able to use our education as Black women who have attended, an all Black women's college, to inform people, this is what you have been seeing. This is why this is also important. And this is what you can do to fix what you have been seeing, so we no longer have to see it.
Do you, as a Black woman, identify as a Christian first or a Black woman?
I'll start with this one. Oh, when you get into like the whole like intersecting identities, that whole type of ordeal, it gets complicated. But what I will say, as for me, I identify as a child of God first. And so that is not necessarily, it's not necessarily like isolating myself to like the Christian doctrine, right? So when I talk about being a child of God, I talk about kingdom, right? And I talk about expanding the kingdom of heaven and like making sure that is passed onto the earth and birthed through me. And so I feel like that surpasses everything when it comes to who we are as people and God's children is, are you my child? I think we have to understand, if we could understand that, we could probably see a miracle happen in the land. If we could all understand that we are children of God first, and understanding that God, as a creator of everything, the reason for creating all these different shades and all these different pigmentations, it's to display his creativity. It was never to make it seem like there was a hierarchy or that one group was better than the other. It was about, no, I'm a creative. I created all of this, and look what I can do. I can give you white skin. I can give you brown skin. I can make you chocolate. It like he does all this. I can give you kinky hair. I can give you curly hair. It's literally God's creativity that we are looking at when we look at one another who are different and like us. I think as man does, and as the agenda of the enemy, it has been perverted. The creativity of God has been perverted. I think that's what man does. We pervert things, and we mess things up. And also, as being, the enemy's plan, he perverts things. Like we talked about how sex is good, how all these things that God created is good. It's good. It's good. But now things are bad because they've been perverted.
I would say what she said, but I do identify as a daughter first. And I realized during quarantine that I take so much pride in being a daughter of God. And being stuck inside, I've realized I'm really your child. Like the churches are closed, everything is closed. It's just me and you. But like what Kayla said, my skin color expresses himself through me. So am I really picking one over the other? I'm his daughter, and I'm just his brown daughter, the way that he desired to create me.
For me personally, I would definitely say that I identify as a Christian first. I identify as an image bearer first. That is my main identity, and everything else flows from that. Any gift that I work in, any thing that I have my hands on, the way that I advocate, the way that I project my voice and use my voice when I see an injustice and faults of this world, it's directly connecting to being an image bearer. So what would you say to someone who doesn't exactly know how to bridge those two identities?
I'll say that I had to remind myself that Jesus is the first advocate. And his role has always been to advocate on our behalf. And for us to take on the image of Christ, I feel like it would be a disservice to the kingdom for us to not take on the advocate aspect of Jesus as well as the loving aspect of Jesus. And I think they can both work in accordance with each other, because it doesn't mean that because there is an injustice that you have to be rageful and have, this automatic anger, or, go and destroy, whether it be property, whether it be slander someone's name or anything like that. That is not the image that God wants you to present of him, if that is what you're going to identify with. But I think it has to be first acknowledging that this is an injustice. This is an injustice that God does not approve of. So now what is my role in ensuring that God gets the glory out of whatever the decisions end up being?
Yeah, I definitely want to add to that. I do want to be real though. We're still humans. Yes, we are children of God. Yes, we love the Lord, like all of these things, but we are still humans. We have human feelings. We are allowed to feel those things. If you want to be angry, feel that anger. My thing is, what I want us to understand is there is not just one form of advocacy. You can advocate in many different ways. There are many different avenues. I might choose to be more vocal. I might choose to be on the front lines. I choose to run for office. But what is your calling? What is your purpose? I think you are to advocate in whatever your purpose, whatever your defined assignment is, whatever you are aligned with, whatever you feel like God has told you to do, you do that, and you be purposeful in it, because you're going to do it better than I can. And so I just want us to be mindful, like, hey, use that rage, use that anger, use that sadness. That's momentum. Go in your perspective areas, do something with it, but you are allowed to feel that way. If you didn't feel that way, I would be concerned. If you weren't angry and you weren't sad to see what is going on around this world, I'd be like, huh? Because I think even Jesus himself would be just, God is disappointed. You know, if you didn't feel that way, I would definitely question you. But what I would say is just know your form of advocacy and do it well. Do exactly what God called you to do.
So I saw this quote that says, "You can't be loud about Jesus, but quiet when his people are hurting." And that stuck out to me like, wow, like that is so true. I think that even in this, like we have to be mindful that, you know, God tells us to hate what he hates and love what he loves. And God hates injustices, and he tells us in his scripture in I'm looking at my notes, in Deuteronomy 10 and 17, that 10 and 18, he says he executes justice for the fatherless and the widow, and he loves the sojourner, meaning that God is a God of justice. And he says he executes, meaning that he like carries it out, he brings it forth, he puts it into effect. And if we are his children, if we are to be like Christ, if we are to love the things that God loves, hate the things God hates, then we also should be just as loud about the injustices. God doesn't tell us to, you know, he tells us to have righteous anger, and he says you can be angry, but sin not. And so like he says here, like the anger is valid, but God, we do have to, when combining those identities as a Christian, as a Black woman, and referring back to the source, which is God is not happy with the injustices. So when we take on his countenance, like we too should be outraged.
So speaking of injustices, what are some, I guess, prejudices or injustices, or what issues have you seen in the line of work that you want to go into, that you want to interrupt the systems that exist there?
That is such a, God, that question is just, it's so broad because I could name so many different things. The biggest one for me is educationally in my community. I graduated from a predominantly Black school, high school, but 10 minutes down the road was a predominantly white school. And I actually attended that school as well. And I think I might have told some of you this story, but so I went to the white school, Oxford, my 9th and 10th grade year. And then I went to Anniston High School, which is predominantly Black, 11th and 12th grade year. And I immediately saw the difference in education I was receiving. I'm talking about from resources, the style of teaching, the opportunities, the whole 9 yards. Everything was absolutely different. So I think that's where I saw the neglect. I saw the school to prison pipeline happening right before my eyes. I saw the neglect. I saw the people living in very impoverished areas, and the fact that they were living in certain areas, that just showed you the type of education, the type of food, the type of water, everything. If you lived in a certain area, you were almost guaranteed nothing. That's pretty much what it was. And so I saw that type of neglect in the same community that I grew up in. And because I was aware of those things, and because I had exposure and opportunity, and what I always tell people is there's two things that separate us from the privilege, and that is exposure and opportunity. When you are exposed to new things and you have the opportunity to experience something else, you will not stay the same. You will not be complacent. You will not be stagnant. And so because I went off to Spelman, and because I was exposed to all these different people and all these different entities, I said, hey, I want my people back at home to experience the same thing. So they're not putting up with just what they're giving us, which is the bare minimum. You deserve better. You deserve better food places to eat at, not just these grocery stores where they promote food deserts, not just a school system that just wants to get you by and just sign the high school diploma without teaching you anything, not people who don't want to give you, resources, people who are actually suffering, they just really don't care. And so because I was aware of all those things, I knew that I had to be the one to speak up and speak out. And then Congressman John Lewis always says, it's okay to get in good trouble. And I think that was the momentum that I had in going into my career path. Like, it's time to get in some good trouble. because we have been going the same way backwards for far too long. And Aniston is just one of many who have suffered on the account of those who do not speak up for those who have been suffering.
Education needs a miracle. There needs to be a miracle in the field of education. And like, when you just go back to the history of education, the roots of education, and you just look into policies in the Constitution where it says unequal education expenditures are not unconstitutional. So if you can tell me that unequal resources are not unconstitutional, what more can we expect, right? And so I think when you look at the root and the framework of what is shaping education, what is shaping how we are indoctrinating and inculcating information into students, it just needs to be a big revamping. And I think for me, the injustices, I think part of the issue is, I think we're teaching, not everybody, but I think we're primarily trying to teach children how to break through traditional expectations of education instead of breaking education. And it's a big difference, because when you break through the expectation, you still leave it there for somebody else. However, when you break it completely, it's now dismantled. There's no ceiling. Now everybody can soar. So I think once we can just teach our children that, and then also put people in the classroom who value kids. I think we have to remember that doing this work with children is not easy, and everybody should not be doing it. Jesus even said in Matthew, he said, if you lead any of these little ones away, you might as well tie a milestone around your neck and drown in the sea. And so we have to take that seriously, because it's like, what are you doing? What are you doing? How are you leading astray? Because children are so, I don't want to use the words gullible and naive, but they're innocent, right? And then they can be imparted on very easily. They pick up, they see, and they just like, they pick up a lot of things. And also when we're training children up, the Bible says, train up a child in the way they should go. When he's old, he will not depart from it. And I think when we like dissect that scripture even more, it's like, when you're training up children, it's like, he's going to go in that way. She's going to go in that way. So if you're training up your children in schools that are unequal, in schools that have all these disparities, everything, what is the aftermath of that? They're going to continue on that way.
LaKayla was talking about how we have to address all the systems, and in a sense, they're all kind of connected. So as y'all are talking about education, these same populations are dealing with the same things in healthcare. You have unequal opportunities in education, but you also have unequal opportunities in healthcare. Is not affordable to Black and brown communities. And you were talking about quarantining and how quarantining is not beneficial, because some built environments, some people's homes aren't safe. And so now you're stuck in your home, and maybe you have mold in your house because you can't afford to fix the leaks or your plumbing. And so it affects your health. And then it affects the kids who are in school, but having to be in their home trying to do their schoolwork, but they don't have Wi-Fi. And now you're exposed to mold. Maybe you don't have the same access to food, right? And so now the food that you once got from school, you're not getting at home. And so now your health is affected. And so not only are you affected in education, but now you're affected in health. So it's not just an education problem. It's not just a healthcare problem, but it's a problem in all these systems, and it's all connected. And so it's a shame because we see that low-income communities are the communities that are most affected, and they're affected by all of these injustices in all of these systems. And so not only am I being bombarded by my health, I'm also not getting a quality education, and the government also doesn't look after me. I'm scared of the police. What kind of mess is that, you know? And so we have targets coming at our Black and brown communities from 10 different thousand ways. But specifically talking about the healthcare sector or industry, rather, we see that even during quarantine, we see that a lot of low-income communities may live in rural regions, or they may live in urban regions. A lot of these regions are exposed to pollution and toxins in the air. So now I'm stuck in my home. And so now I'm more likely to be exposed to things that are going to affect my health. And so now I'm at a worse condition than I was before, because before I left to go to school every day. I left to go to work every day. But now I'm stuck at home because we're in a pandemic. And now I'm worse off than I was before. And it's unfair. It's unfair and it's saddening. Because it's one thing to say that, okay, just this one injustice affects this one population. No, all of these injustices are affecting this one population. And so we have kids who their health is affected, their education is affected, their mental health. Some of them going to school was their way of escape. And so now they're in an abusive home. And so there's so many different things that are coming at our kids at one time. Yes, our adults are affected too, but my heart is towards kids. And so it's just like, wow, like it's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot. And there's so much that needs to be done in every system so that we can simultaneously knock some things out. So if we knock something out in healthcare, maybe we can also knock something out in education. If we fix something in government, it's going to fix something in education and in healthcare at the same time.
Chloe, you are right. Like, this stuff not going to change unless something is addressed. And that thing that needs to be addressed is us being in them systems, right? So many industries, so many corporations, so many hospitals say we have a commitment to diversity, but you have 0 or 1 Black person on your board. How diverse is that, right? So you have people on your board that can't make decisions or can't make advocacy efforts for us. That's an issue. So we need to get in there, right? We need to get in there. And when we get in there, we know how to advocate for our communities because we lived in houses with mold, right? We had to walk to school because our district didn't have buses. They couldn't afford them. So stuff like that, it's when you look at it in our lens, we know how to advocate, but when you have people on the board, in the systems that are trying to speak on behalf of us, you can't do that. But what comes with that is us having to go back, reach back into our communities, reminding those that think, you know, I'm just so used to seeing somebody like that in that position. I'm not used to seeing somebody that looks like me doing that, but we have to do it. And sometimes, I say this all the time, sometimes it's like, I don't know how I'm gonna get there. The way wasn't paid for me to get there. I don't have a seat at the table, right? But God has equipped us to get a seat at the table. So many, all these miracles that didn't happen because God wants us there. You know, we get into law school, we don't know how we got into law school. We get into med school, we don't know how. But it's because of him, because we have the chance to represent him to other people, and we have a chance to advocate for his people, his sons and daughters. You talking about children of God, we need people that'll advocate on behalf of them. His children ain't just white. His children ain't just male, you know, and so we need people that just are a reflection of that so we can really get some change going. So yeah, healthcare is really broad, right? Because you could talk about health disparities. You could talk about, you know, health disparities. A lot of people know, I'm pretty sure everybody that's on this call knows something about somebody who had some type of pregnancy complication. You know, somebody that passed away, gestational diabetes, preeclampsia, fibroids, whatever, men getting prostate cancer, whatever the case may be, right? But that's systemic, right? Because we have doctors that go into these rooms and listen to somebody say symptoms and say, oh, they just on drugs. You know, that we have these implicit biases, these preconceived notions. And so we just have to get in there because we know how to advocate for our people.
I want to go into some of your individual careers for just one moment. Sierra, you're running for office in your hometown of Anderson, Alabama. That's huge, first and foremost. That's a really grand thing. And God knows that there are so many things that you face every single day as you're trying to serve your community, as you're trying to make your face known in the community that you desire to serve. So what are some of the challenges that you've seen on your campaign trail so far?
You know what? Surprisingly, it hasn't been so much of the fact that I'm a Black woman, it's that I'm young. I have heard, not so much from the community. I wouldn't say the community is actually embracing me in ways that when I said, God, when you are called to something, it don't matter what you look like, no matter where you come from. If you were in the back of the line, when God called you to it, I promise you, he will show up and show out in your life. And I really feel like God has really done that. And I was so worried in the beginning. I was like, okay, God, you know, they can say so many different things about me. They could say this, they could say that, you know. But the things that I was worried about isn't even a question, you know. But it's not so much about being a Black woman. It's just being young. My hometown, Anniston, the population is about 22,000, and about 52% of those people are Black. I think the challenges in that is getting Black people to understand the importance and just how vital voting really is. In my ward alone, you have about a little bit over 5,000 constituents, but only about 600 vote, and 30% of those voters are white people. And so my question is to my community is, do you really care about your community? Do you really care about the people who are sitting in the seat representing you and serving you? Do you care that your children don't have a good education? Do you care that you see a Popeyes before you see a good grocery store with fresh vegetables? Do you care, do you care that in your soil, they can't even build across the street from you because there's PCB and lead in your soil, and you're drinking out of the water pipes that has been poisoned, and you've been drinking this for decades? Do you care? We don't see it in the polls, and that's due to a lack of education in our community. Are we showing them just how important it is? And I think that has been the struggle. It's showing my people like, hey, I'm advocating for you. I'm down for you I'm literally dedicating my youth to you because I want to see our kids defeat the school to prison pipeline. I'm tired of seeing my young Black brothers and my cousins and my sisters literally not even get to graduate high school because they're being shot and killed, or they're being put in the prison systems before they're even allowed to see a diploma. Like, I'm sick and tired of seeing those things. And so the struggle is getting my people to believe in themselves. That's the thing. I could care less about what the enemy got to say. I'm not fighting against the enemy. I got the victory in that. I'm not worried about. God's going to take care of that. It's getting my people to understand, hey, we have a chance and an opportunity to shape some things right now. They're young Black women. Do you know, like, this is your time? Like, this is literally your time. I have never seen such an amazing time, such a time as this, for you to get out and really educate our people, because there are people that are listening and they want to listen. So my goal is to go into those communities who have been neglected for so long. I go to the Section 8 homes, the projects that everybody's so scared to go into. Hey, are you registered to vote? Why should I vote? No one cares about. Let me tell you why. Let me tell you why I'm running for you, so that you can utilize that vote and vote for me, and I can be that voice for you. Like that has definitely been the struggle, but I'm getting there, because I truly believe that we are in a time that is so unique and so special. And God has literally trained us up for this in our prospective areas. Like, when I say years ago, did I think that I was going to be coming back home after I graduated Spelman to be a 21-year-old councilwoman? No. You couldn't give me $1 million and tell me God would have to come down here and say, Sierra, you're doing this yourself, for me to actually believe that. Because there's so many obstacles. But what I've learned is, and I saw this from a video, is stop asking why questions. Why literally traps us in fear. Like, why God? Why me? Why am I doing this? Instead, ask what questions. What can I do to win? What can I do to accomplish this? Because then you're putting it in your mind like, hey, I'm gonna find a path to actually do this. So the struggle is just getting my people to believe in my people. That's all it is. And I believe we're getting there. We are in such a spiritual awakening right now. God is definitely placing, he's placing concern on a lot of people's hearts, where they're starting to question so many different things. One thing that I did want, because there was a comment when we were talking about something earlier, this is kind of off of what I wanted to say, is we have got to say that we have got to stop saying that we need to fix the system, because the system is not broken. The reason why the system is not broken, because it's doing exactly what it was designed to do. The Constitution was founded on the ideals of racism and white supremacy. You have to throw out the system and replace it in order for us to be able to get in these perspective areas and do it without a fight. That's what you have to do. And that's something that I want us to know. Like, this is hard. we're having to change policies. We're having to change, literally amend the entire Constitution. We're having to do all these different things, but it's so worth it because we are literally out with the old and coming in with the new.
For my two healthcare women, what would you two tell or advise Black women who go into these doctor's office or emergency rooms needing help? What would you tell them to say, or how can they advocate for themselves?
I think that is the challenge that people are trying to maneuver now. For example, right, when you a Black woman, you a Black woman, right? It don't matter if you got a PhD, don't matter if you got an MD, don't matter if you got a PharmD, whatever, right? I have a cousin who was pregnant and it went bad, and her mother was advocating for her. She's a doctor, but she didn't tell them that she was a doctor. They like, nah, she good. She's not, right? That's because these physicians that are saying that, you know, I want to do medicine, they don't want to do it for the people. Like, they don't want to do it for us. They have these implicit biases. The way that the structure of medicine, and like Chloe's talking about healthcare management, all that is, it's not with us in mind, right? That's why we have to get in there. And so what can you do? You just have to, in the field of healthcare, you have to advocate for yourself. You have to push, right? Because you could think about Akira, the girl that died. A friend on the call has a relative that has passed away from this. This is something that is recurrent, right? But why does it keep happening? It's because the system is broken. Well, Sierra said the system not broken, but healthcare it's a system that it was sought out to help people, right? But that's not what it's doing. So I personally think that system is broken, and it won't be fixed until we get people like us in there. So what can you do? You keep advocating, you keep pushing. If you tell a doctor something is wrong and they don't listen, you go to the higher up. You know, that might be hard and controversial because they may be the higher up, but you have to advocate for your health because nobody can tell you how you feeling. You know what I'm saying? It's just so many cases, not even with pregnancy, with cancer, with mental health, all these instances. I'm not okay. You must be okay. I'm not okay. And it just happens all the time. I'm pretty sure all of you know somebody who has dealt with some injustice in healthcare, but you have to keep fighting for yourself and report. I hate to say it, but like report, because those people, they took on an oath, right? You took on an oath to care for mankind, but you have your preconceived notions in the back of your head. You can't serve nobody like that, right? You're supposed to go in with the ideals that, you know, I am here to help others. I'm here to advocate. And some people, they in it for the money. And when you in it for the money, if your passion out there, if you wasn't purpose for that, if God hasn't assigned you to that, yes, you won't do it right. You're not doing it how God wants it to be done. Healthcare needs to be fixed. Government needs to be fixed. All these need to be fixed because people need to realize that they need to stop seeking out stuff for personal accolades, for glory, for fame, for all that. You need to get on your knees and pray. God, what do you want me to do right now? What is it that I can do to help people? Right? Not so people can see me, but so I can help others. Praise or not. And I just think that's the issue. If you in the emergency room and you feel like you got a problem, let them know. Don't let them tell you don't, because you know your body more than somebody else.
Advocate and follow your instinct. Said if you know there's something wrong with you, there's something wrong with you. I had a professor who knew something was off with her body, and she went to her practitioner, and they told her something was wrong, but she knew there was some. She followed her instinct. She knew there was something was wrong, so she went to someone else and found out she had cancer. Now, if she would have listened, oh, they said nothing's wrong with me, even though I feel like something is wrong with me. Who knows what could have happened to her? They think we do too much sometimes. They think we overreact, and so they make it seem like what we experience, it's not that bad. You're fine. You're gonna be okay. It ain't that deep. But it could honestly lead to death, and that's ridiculous because we aren't taken seriously, and that's scary. It's scary. But you, like April said, you have to advocate for yourself and follow your instincts. If you know something is wrong with your body, go to somebody else. If you have to even go to the Department of Health, somebody gonna help me, okay? Somebody.
It's this term that we like to think about. It's called medical mistrust, right? So it's so much stuff that has happened in our history that made us not, even outside of healthcare, that made us not want to trust people that don't look like us. So for example, like the Tuskegee syphilis study, that's where they did all the experiments on the men in Tuskegee, and it was bad. Look it up. Henrietta Lacks, they stole her cells while she was dying and didn't give nothing to them. So many cases where we don't trust people who are in these positions. And I keep saying it, but like, we got to get there, because if I'm going to the doctor and I'm saying this is wrong and they're not listening, what can I do? Or if I'm going to the doctor and they're saying this is wrong with you and you like, can't be, right? Medical mistrust. We don't want to go to the doctor, which is contributing to our health, because we don't trust the people that's there. We have to get in there.
I want to close with the quote that inspired this Lens Talks night. It is from Anna Julia Cooper. And if you are a Spelmanite, you probably remember sitting in Sister's Chapel the first few days of, honestly, the first day of campus, going to the ceremony called When and Where I Enter, where Spelman put on this amazing display of just Black women's strength and resilience. And it came from the quote from Anna Julia Cooper that says, "Only the Black woman can say when and where I enter, in the quiet, undisputed dignity of my womanhood, without violence and without suing or special patronage. Then and there, the whole Negro race enters with me." So I wanted to give that quote to you tonight. I want to thank each of the panelists. I thank you guys so much for your yes. I thank you so much for just immediately just being down for this project, and I really hope that we can continue to cultivate these conversations, even with people who do not look like us, even with women who do not look like us, or spaces that we are the minorities. May we be the leaders in these conversations. And even though I didn't touch so much upon the film industry, but y'all pray for it, because going through Spelman, we've visited some places that have sold film equipment, that have been sets, and literally have walked into places where I've only seen white men, being on cameras, being on the set, writing our stories. It's definitely systemic. It is something that the walls definitely have to be broken down, and through this platform that I hope and I pray one day will become a studio, will become a network on its own. I pray that I can be the bridge that will interrupt those systems in film and media. Because there are a lot that exists there. There aren't enough women there, and there definitely are not enough Black women telling our stories. Y'all, there's a lot of work to do, but God has given us the strength and the ability. He's given us the power. He's given us the authority to go into this land and possess it and take it over for His glory, for His kingdom. So y'all, let's go do it. This is the charge of the night. Possess the land, possess the land, possess the land. I love each of you, and good night.
A heavy heart, feeling pains of emotions that may not even belong to me, and I hate it. The permission you give hatred, a leader or a leech. And nowadays it seems as if them words is one and the same, and who's the blame and who's to blame. What I'm saying is, don't think my God is somehow singing along with your twisted cadence. Make us great again. We ain't never been great, people, face it. Let me show my appreciation for you entertaining the conversation. Don't be impatient with how long it's taken.
God, do I serve you silent, or do I serve you crying? Do I serve you screaming, or do I serve you dying? I prayed even harder, ran even farther. Come see about your children, 'cause we don't know the Father.